My name is Annalise, 32 years old, and until last month I was just another senior financial analyst at Parkson and Rhodes investment firm. For 5 years I worked tirelessly to earn my corner office with that breathtaking Manhattan skyline view. Then one morning, I walked in to find the CEO's son sitting in my chair smirking as he snapped selfies. Later that day I saw his social media post, "All mine soon." What he never expected was that I would find that one email that would change everything. Before I tell you how a single forwarded message turned my entire career around, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to catch more of my workplace drama stories that might just save your career. Someday. I wasn't born into wealth or privilege. My parents were public school teachers in a small town in Michigan. They instilled in me the value of hard work and education from an early age. Unlike many of my colleagues who went to Ivy League schools, I attended a state university on scholarship, working part-time jobs to cover my living expenses. When I graduated with my finance degree, I had $60,000 in student loans and a burning desire to prove myself on Wall Street. Getting my foot in the door at Parkson and Rhodes wasn't easy. I started in the most entry-level position possible, basically a glorified coffee runner who occasionally got to update spreadsheets. But I made it my mission to outwork everyone else. I stayed late every night, volunteered for the projects nobody wanted, and spent weekends studying advanced financial modeling techniques. After 2 years of grinding, I finally got promoted to junior analyst. The breakthrough came 3 years ago when our team was working on the Morrison acquisition. It was a $400 million deal that was about to fall apart because of discrepancies in the financial reporting. Everyone was panicking, but I noticed something in the subsidiary reports that others had missed. I stayed up for 48 hours straight, dug through thousands of pages of financial statements, and identified the problem. The deal was saved, earning the firm a $20 million commission. That was when CEO Roger Bennett first really noticed me. He called me into his office, congratulated me personally, and 3 months later I was promoted to senior financial analyst with my own corner office. That office wasn't just a space to work, it was a symbol of everything I had accomplished. The floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Hudson River, the mahogany desk, the privacy to hold meetings with important clients. It all represented my hard work and dedication. My team was like family to me. Rachel from accounting had become my closest friend at the company. We started on the same day and bonded over being 2 of the few women in leadership positions. Marcus from IT always had my back when technology failed me, fixing problems before I even had to ask. And Diana, my assistant for the past 2 years, was incredibly loyal and efficient, making my busy life manageable. For a long time, I thought Roger Bennett respected me. He seemed to value meritocracy and hard work above all else. In meetings, he would often ask for my opinion, even when more senior executives were present. I felt seen and valued, a rare feeling for a woman in finance. He even mentioned that if I successfully led the upcoming cross-Atlantic merger, I would be considered for a director position, something unprecedented for someone my age and with my background. The corner office meant everything to me. It wasn't just about the status, though, that certainly mattered in our hierarchy-obsessed company. It was proof that I belonged, that I had earned my place at the table, despite not coming from money, not having the right connections, and not being a man. Every morning when I unlocked that door, I felt a surge of pride. This was mine. I had earned it. The cross-Atlantic merger was going to be my masterpiece. It was a complex international deal worth over $1 billion that would establish Parkson and Rhodes as a major player in European markets. I had spent 6 months preparing for it, building relationships with our potential partners, analyzing every financial detail, creating comprehensive risk assessment models. This was the project that would cement my place in the company's leadership, possibly even put me on track for the executive suite someday. Everything changed 3 months ago. Roger called an all-staff meeting to make a special announcement. His son, Bradley Bennett, had just graduated with his MBA from Wharton and would be joining the firm. Roger beamed with pride as he introduced Bradley, a tall, conventionally handsome man in his late 20s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Bradley will be working with various departments to learn the business from the ground up, Roger explained. Please make him feel welcome and help him understand how things work around here. I noticed the way Bradley looked at me during that meeting. There was something calculating in his gaze, something that made me uncomfortable. When Roger introduced us afterward, Bradley shook my hand a little too firmly, held it a little too long. "Dad has told me all about you," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The miracle worker who saved the Morrison deal. I look forward to seeing your methods up close." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't admiration, it was assessment, like a predator sizing up potential competition. I brushed it off at the time, telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, he was the boss's son, and I needed to make a good impression. But as I walked back to my corner office that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. I just didn't realize yet how right I was, or how quickly my carefully built career would be threatened by the man who would soon steal everything I had worked for. Bradley's first day set the tone for everything that followed. He arrived at 9:30, a full hour after everyone else was expected to be at their desks. He wore a perfectly tailored Italian suit, expensive designer shoes, and a watch that could have paid off the remainder of my student loans. The air of entitlement around him was palpable. I was in the break room getting coffee when I first witnessed how he treated the support staff. Linda, one of our receptionists who had been with the company for 15 years, offered to show him around. "I already know where everything is," he said dismissively, "but you can get me a coffee, black 2 sugars. Linda, clearly taken aback, complied without argument. I watched her face fall as she walked away. That was my first red flag, but certainly not the last. In our department meeting later that morning, Roger introduced Bradley to our team and explained that he would be shadowing different team members to learn about our operations. When my turn came to present the latest updates on the cross-Atlantic merger, Bradley interrupted me repeatedly. "Are you sure about those projections?" he asked, leaning back in his chair with a smirk. "They seem overly optimistic to me." "These projections are based on 6 months of intensive research and financial modeling," I replied professionally. "I'd be happy to walk you through the methodology after the meeting." "No need," he said, with a wave of his hand. "I just think someone with more international experience should review them before we proceed." Several colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Roger cleared his throat but said nothing to correct his son's behavior. I continued my presentation, but the damage was done. My authority had been publicly undermined. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes. Meetings I would normally be invited to were held without me. Emails that required my input went unanswered. The cross-Atlantic merger timeline kept getting pushed back for vague administrative reasons. Information that I needed to do my job effectively was increasingly difficult to obtain. Then Rachel caught me in the break room one afternoon looking concerned. She glanced around to make sure we were alone before speaking. "Have you heard the rumors?" she asked in a low voice. "What rumors?" "People are saying Bradley is going to be put in charge of the cross-Atlantic merger." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. He just got here. He has no experience with international mergers." Rachel shook her head. "I overheard Roger and the board chairman discussing it yesterday. They're seriously considering it. Apparently Bradley worked on something similar during his MBA program." "A case study is not the same as a billion-dollar real-world merger," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the rising panic. "There's something else you should know," Rachel continued. "I have a friend who works at Goldstein Partners. Bradley worked there for 6 months before business school. He was asked to leave after he took credit for another analyst's work and nearly tanked a major client relationship. Why would Roger hire him here knowing that? It wasn't just Goldstein. He was at Morgan Stanley before that lasted less than a year. Apparently there's a pattern." Rachel looked genuinely worried for me. "And from what I hear, Roger and Bradley have a complicated relationship. Roger divorced his mom when Bradley was young, lots of guilt there. He's trying to make up for lost time." As Rachel spoke, I noticed Bradley standing in the doorway of the break room watching us. How long had he been there? Had he overheard our conversation? He smiled coldly and walked away without a word. "Be careful," Annalise Rachel warned. "I think he sees you as competition." That night I stayed late reviewing the cross-Atlantic files, making sure all my work was properly documented and backed up. As I was leaving around 9:30, I noticed the light still on in Roger's office. Through the glass wall, I could see Roger and Bradley in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Bradley was gesturing emphatically, while Roger looked uncomfortable. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but body language told me enough. This wasn't a normal father-son conversation. This was a negotiation, and I had a sinking feeling I was the subject. The next morning, I received an email from Roger, asking me to compile all my research and notes on the cross-Atlantic merger and share access with Bradley so he can get up to speed. The email ended with a vague mention of potential restructuring of project leadership to maximize our chances of success. I stared at those words for a long time, reading between the lines. The writing was on the wall, but I wasn't ready to accept it yet. I had put too much of myself into this project, into this company, to be pushed aside so easily. But as I looked out of my corner office window at the skyline I had worked so hard to earn, I couldn't shake the feeling that Bradley Bennett had marked me for elimination. And the worst part was, I didn't know why. Over the next 2 weeks, my position at Parkson and Rhodes deteriorated rapidly. Suddenly, every report I submitted was scrutinized with unprecedented intensity. Minor typos that would have been overlooked before were now treated as major errors. My financial models, which had always been praised for their thoroughness, were questioned and often sent back for revisions without specific feedback. In meetings, I noticed a disturbing new pattern. Whenever I spoke, Bradley would subtly shake his head, creating an atmosphere of doubt around my contributions. If I made a point, he would often restate it minutes later, in slightly different words, and others would nod, as if hearing it for the first time. It was as if I was becoming invisible in real time. Clients I had built relationships with for years were gradually reassigned to other team members, always with plausible excuses. They requested someone with more experience in their industry sector or were balancing the client load. My protests to middle management were met with apologetic but firm responses that the decisions came from above. Even my team began to distance themselves. Not Rachel or Marcus, they remained loyal, but others. Lunch invitations stopped. Conversations would halt when I approached. I was being isolated, and it was happening with surgical precision. The real blow came on a Monday morning. I arrived at the office at my usual time, 7:30, ready to prepare for an important client call at 9. When I reached my corner office, I stopped dead in my tracks. My personal items, photos, awards, and files were sitting in boxes outside the door. Inside, a maintenance worker was hanging a new nameplate, Bradley Bennett, Executive Director, International Acquisitions. A title that didn't even exist last week. I stood there frozen in shock as Bradley sauntered up beside me, coffee in hand. "Morning, Annalise," he said casually, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Dad thought it would make more sense for me to use this office, since I'll be taking over the Cross-Atlantic project. The corner location makes it easier to coordinate with the international team." He smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "Your new workspace is in the bullpen. Diana will show you." My assistant Diana appeared, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Annalise. This all happened over the weekend. I only found out this morning." I fought to keep my composure. "Where's Roger? I need to speak with him." "He's in meetings all day with the board," Bradley replied. "But this came directly from him. You can take it up with him tomorrow if you really feel the need." I had no choice but to follow Diana to my new workspace, a desk in the open area where junior analysts Saturday. No privacy, no windows, no status. People stared as I unpacked my boxes, whispers following me like shadows. The humiliation was overwhelming. When I finally managed to speak with Roger the next day, his response was dismissive. "It's just office space, Annalise," he said without meeting my eyes. "Bradley needs to establish his presence as he takes on more responsibility. The cross-Atlantic merger requires someone with his international background." "His international background? He has none," I protested. "I've been preparing for this merger for 6 months. I know every detail, every player involved." "And you'll still be part of the team," Roger assured me, though we both knew it was a lie, just in a supporting role. "Bradley brings a fresh perspective." "A fresh perspective doesn't replace years of experience and relationships I've built with the European partners." Roger's expression hardened. "My decision is final. Bradley will lead the cross-Atlantic merger. I suggest you find a way to work with him productively if you value your future at this company." The threat was clear. Fall in line or leave. That evening, feeling defeated, I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. Bradley had posted a photo of himself sitting in my former office, feet up on the desk, grinning smugly. The caption read, "All mine soon. Bye-bye, analyze number takeover." His friends had commented beneath, "Show that diversity hire whose boss old, guard out new blood in." She never belonged there anyway. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Bradley wasn't just taking my office and my project. He was publicly humiliating me, making sport of destroying my career. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt began to transform into something else: determination. If Bradley wanted a fight, he would get one. But I wouldn't confront him directly. That's what he wanted, a public display he could use against me. Instead, I would be strategic. I would find out exactly what was happening and why. I closed my laptop, dried my tears, and began to plan. Bradley Bennett had just made a critical mistake. He had underestimated me, and more importantly, he had gotten sloppy. That social media post wasn't just cruel, it was revealing. This wasn't about business or merit. This was personal, and I needed to find out why. The next morning, I arrived at the office with renewed purpose. If I was going to fight back, I needed allies and information. My first stop was Diana, my former assistant, who now worked primarily for Bradley, but still handled some of my scheduling. "Can we talk?" I asked quietly, when I found her alone at her desk, somewhere private. She nodded, looking nervous. We found an empty conference room and closed the door. "I need to understand what's happening," I said. "This isn't just about an office or even the Cross-Atlantic project. Something else is going on." Diana bit her lip. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but you've always been good to me." She lowered her voice. "Bradley has been accessing all your files, going through your emails, reviewing all your client communications. He can do that. He got Roger to authorize it under the guise of project transition. But he's not just looking at cross-Atlantic materials. He's digging into everything you've ever worked on." This was worse than I thought. Has he said anything about why he's targeting me specifically? Not directly, but... Diana hesitated. "He's been spending a lot of time with Roger talking about streamlining operations and eliminating redundancies. Yesterday, I overheard him mention a list of people who should be phased out for maximum efficiency. And I'm on that list, I guessed." Diana nodded grimly. "Near the top." My next stop was Marcus in IT. We'd developed a friendship over the years, and I knew he had access to the company's email systems for maintenance purposes. "I need a favor," I told him in the server room where we couldn't be overheard, "and it's completely within my rights as a senior analyst." Marcus looked concerned. "What's going on, Annalise? Everyone's talking about how Bradley took your office." I explained the situation briefly. "I need to see if Bradley has been tampering with my work. Diana says he's been going through all my files. I'm worried he might be altering my reports to make me look bad." Marcus thought for a moment. "I can do a system check to see if any of your files have been modified and by whom. That's within protocol for security purposes." 2 hours later, Marcus confirmed my suspicions. "Several of your financial models for the cross-Atlantic merger have been altered in the past week. The changes are subtle, changing projections to show lower returns, introducing small errors in calculations." "Can you prove Bradley did it?" "The system logs show the changes were made under his login credentials." This was damning, but not enough. I needed more. Rachel provided the next piece of the puzzle. "I've been doing some digging into Bradley's past," she said, when we met for coffee after work. "Remember I told you he was asked to leave his previous positions? There's more to it. At Goldstein, he was suspected of selling confidential client information to competitors. Nothing was proven, but the coincidences were too strong to ignore. Why would Roger hire him knowing this? I don't think he knows. From what I've gathered, Bradley's departures were always framed as him seeking better opportunities. No formal complaints were filed because the companies wanted to avoid scandal. Armed with this information, I began monitoring Bradley's activities more closely, looking for patterns. Diana kept me informed about his meetings and calls. Marcus set up alerts for any changes to my files or unusual system access. The breakthrough came 3 weeks after I lost my office. Late one night, I received an alert from Marcus about unusual email activity. Bradley had sent a large file to an external email address at 11:30 p.m., well after business hours. The file contained confidential client data from the cross-Atlantic merger. "Can you access the email?" I asked Marcus over the phone. "Not the content, but I can see the metadata. The recipient is someone at Brunswick Capital." Brunswick Capital was a direct competitor to Parkson and Rhodes, known for their aggressive tactics in acquiring new business. "This doesn't make sense," I said. "Why would Bradley send confidential information to a competitor that could damage the whole company, including his father. Maybe that's not his concern, Marcus suggested. Maybe he's planning his next move already. The next day, Diana provided another crucial piece of information. Bradley has a private meeting scheduled with someone from Brunswick next week. It's not on his official calendar. He asked me to arrange it verbally and keep it confidential. Now I had a theory, but I needed proof. I stayed late that evening, waiting until most people had left the office. Using my still valid security clearance, I accessed the backup server where all company emails were archived for compliance purposes. As a senior analyst, I had legitimate access to this information for audit trails related to my projects. What I found shocked me to my core. An email thread between Bradley and James Harrington, a partner at Brunswick Capital. From Bradley Bennett to James Harrington, subject, our arrangement. James. I've secured the position overseeing the cross-Atlantic merger. As discussed, I'll provide you with the client list and confidential pricing information once the preliminary agreements are signed next week. This should give Brunswick a significant advantage in approaching these clients with counteroffers before our deal is finalized. In return, I expect the VP position we discussed with the compensation package outlined in our previous meeting. My father remains oblivious to our arrangement. The timeline works perfectly. After the merger fails, Parkson and Rhodes stock will take a significant hit. The board will likely force my father into early retirement for the mistake of putting me in charge. By then, I'll be safely established at Brunswick, with my new title and compensation. Regarding Annalise Carter, don't worry. She's being systematically discredited and will be terminated before she can raise any alarms. Her replacement is already being groomed, someone more willing to follow direction without question. Let's meet next Thursday to finalize details. Bradley. I sat in stunned silence reading the email over and over. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. This was betrayal on a fundamental level. Bradley was deliberately sabotaging the cross-Atlantic merger to force his father out and secure himself a better position at a competing firm, and I was collateral damage in his scheme. My hands shook as I forwarded the email to my personal account, as backup then checked for any additional communications between Bradley and Harrington. There were several more, each more damning than the last, outlining specific confidential information that had been shared and plans for Brunswick to swoop in after the merger failed. I faced an ethical dilemma. If I took this information directly to Roger, would he believe me over his son? Would he think I fabricated the evidence out of revenge for losing my position? And even if he did believe me, would he take appropriate action or try to cover it? Up to protect the family name. I needed advice from someone with legal expertise. That evening, I called my college roommate, Melissa, now a corporate attorney at a prestigious firm. If what you're telling me is accurate, this is serious corporate espionage, she said after I explained the situation. The evidence you gathered was accessed within your security clearance for legitimate business purposes related to your role, so it should be admissible if this ever went to court. But you need to be careful about how you proceed. What's my best move? I asked. Document everything. Make secure copies. Then take it to someone in the company who has a fiduciary duty to protect the firm's interests and is not personally connected to either you or Bradley. The company's general counsel, I realized. Exactly. Lawrence Morton, right? He's respected in legal circles. He'll be obligated to investigate regardless of family politics. With a plan in place, I spent the next day gathering and organizing all the evidence, the altered financial models, the confidential data, transfers, the damning email exchanges. I created a detailed timeline showing the systematic nature of Bradley's actions. As I compiled the evidence, a strange calm came over me. The fear and humiliation of the past weeks transformed into resolute determination. Bradley Bennett had underestimated me, assuming I would crumble under pressure or leave quietly. He never expected me to fight back with such precision. His arrogance would be his downfall. Now I just needed the right moment to act. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The next morning I arrived early as usual and noticed an alert from the system monitoring I had set up with Marcus. During the night, Bradley had sent another email to James Harrington at Brunswick Capital, this one containing actual client contracts and proprietary financial models for the cross-Atlantic merger. The evidence was irrefutable. I called Marcus immediately. Can you confirm this is legitimate? I need to be absolutely certain. It's legitimate, Marcus confirmed after checking the system logs. The email was sent from Bradley's company account at 2:15 a.m. The attachments contained confidential client information that would violate at least 3 corporate policies and possibly federal securities laws. This was the smoking gun I needed, but I still needed to be strategic about how I used it. A direct confrontation with Bradley would be counterproductive. He would simply deny everything and potentially destroy evidence. Going to Roger first was risky. His judgment was clearly compromised when it came to his son. I remembered Melissa's advice: go to someone with a fiduciary duty to the company. Lawrence Morton, the firm's general counsel, was my best option. But I needed to make sure Bradley couldn't intercept my communication. Instead of using the company email system, I decided to print the key evidence and deliver it in person. I gathered the most damning emails, the system logs, showing Bradley's data transfers to Brunswick, and the altered financial reports. I placed everything in a sealed envelope, marked confidential for Lawrence Morton only. My heart pounded as I walked to the legal department on the 38th floor. Morton's assistant was already at her desk. "I need to see Lawrence immediately," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's a matter of urgent company security." "He's in a meeting until 10, she replied. "Please interrupt him. This can't wait." I held up the sealed envelope. "It involves potential corporate espionage and securities fraud happening right now." Those magic words did the trick. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in Morton's office, the evidence spread across his desk. His expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the documents. "This is extremely serious, Miss Carter," he said, finally removing his glasses. "If these allegations are accurate, Mr. Bennett's actions constitute multiple violations of company policy, breach of fiduciary duty, and potentially criminal activity." "Every document is authentic," I assured him. "The system logs can be independently verified by your IT security team." "I'll need to investigate immediately," Morton said, gathering the documents. "In the meantime, I advise you to maintain absolute confidentiality about this matter. Don't discuss it with anyone, including Mr. Bennett or the CEO." Of course, I agreed. "But there's one more thing you should know." I took a deep breath. "This morning, Bradley sent additional proprietary information to Brunswick. The email is in his sent folder right now. If he realizes I've come to you, he might delete it." Morton's expression hardened. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention promptly. I'll take immediate steps to preserve all electronic evidence." As I left Morton's office, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Relief that I had finally taken action, anxiety about the potential fallout, and a quiet determination to see this through to the end. Whatever happened next, I had done the right thing, not just for my career, but for the company and all the employees whose livelihoods depended on Parkson and Rhodes' success. Back at my desk in the bullpen, I tried to focus on my work, but it was nearly impossible. My mind kept returning to the documents I had just handed over to Lawrence Morton. Had I done enough? Would he act quickly enough to prevent further damage? At precisely 10:45 a.m., I got my answer. The elevator doors opened, and Lawrence Morton strode purposefully across the floor, accompanied by 2 members of the security team. Without a word to anyone, they headed straight for Roger Bennett's office. Through the glass walls, I could see the conversation unfold. Morton handed Roger a document, probably the evidence I had provided. Roger's expression changed from confusion to disbelief to anger in the span of seconds. He picked up his phone, presumably to call Bradley. Minutes later, Bradley appeared looking confident and unconcerned as he entered his father's office. That confidence evaporated quickly as Morton began speaking, occasionally pointing to documents on the desk. Bradley's face paled, then flushed with anger. He began gesturing wildly, pointing toward the bullpen toward me. Roger slammed his hand on the desk, silencing Bradley mid-sentence. He said something that made Bradley sink into a chair, looking defeated. Morton continued speaking, his demeanor calm but firm. The entire floor had gone quiet, everyone pretending to work while stealing glances at the drama unfolding in the CEO's office. I kept my head down, focusing on my computer screen, but my heart was racing. Diana appeared at my desk, wide-eyed. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Security just locked down Bradley's computer and office." "I can't discuss it," I replied quietly, "but I think things are about to change around here." I was right, but I had no idea just how dramatically. 20 minutes later, the office witnessed a scene few would ever forget. Bradley Bennett, face crimson with rage, was escorted out of the building by security. He was not permitted to return to his office. His personal belongings would be packed and sent to him after a thorough review for company property. As he passed through the bullpen toward the elevator, he stopped at my desk. "You think you've won," he hissed loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "This isn't over. My father will never choose you over me." One of the security guards put a hand on Bradley's shoulder. "Sir, you need to leave the premises immediately." Bradley shrugged off the hand. "I'll sue this entire company into oblivion. And you," he pointed at me, "you'll never work in finance again." The second security guard stepped forward. "Mr. Bennett, if you don't leave voluntarily, we are authorized to remove you forcibly." Something in their tone convinced Bradley to back down. With a final glare in my direction, he allowed himself to be led to the elevator. The floor erupted in whispers as soon as he was gone. Before I could process what had happened, Roger's assistant appeared at my desk. "Mr. Bennett would like to see you in his office immediately." Walking across the floor under the gaze of every employee was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. Speculation was already running wild, and I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes following my progress to the CEO's office. Roger wasn't alone. Lawrence Morton was still there, along with Patricia Winters, the head of Human Resources. Roger's face was ashen, the face of a man who had just discovered a devastating betrayal. "Please sit down," Annalise, Roger said, his voice subdued. I took a seat, keeping my expression neutral despite my racing heart. "Mr. Morton has shared the evidence you provided," Roger began. "I want to hear from you directly. When did you discover what Bradley was doing?" I took a deep breath and explained everything from the gradual undermining of my position to discovering the emails proving Bradley's collaboration with Brunswick Capital. I was careful to stick to facts, avoiding any speculation about motives or personal attacks. When I finished, Roger was silent for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "A significant one. I allowed my personal relationship with Bradley to cloud my professional judgment. I failed to see what was happening right in front of me. Sir, I believe Bradley deliberately targeted me because I was in charge of the cross-Atlantic merger. He needed me out of the way to execute his plan." Roger nodded slowly. "That makes sense. You were the most likely person to spot irregularities in the merger process." He looked at Morton. "What's our exposure here?" "We've already initiated our data breach protocol," Morton replied. "Brunswick has been officially notified that they received stolen proprietary information and must destroy all copies immediately. We're preparing for potential litigation if necessary. As for Bradley, he's facing potential criminal charges for corporate espionage and securities fraud. He's threatening to sue the company I mentioned." Morton actually smiled slightly. "Let him try. The evidence is overwhelming and legally obtained. Any lawsuit would only expose his actions to greater scrutiny." Roger turned back to me. "Annalise, I want to be clear about something. Your position here is secure. More than secure. Your actions have saved this company from what could have been a catastrophic breach." Patricia Winters spoke up. "We'd like to reinstate you to your former office immediately with a formal apology. Additionally, we'll be reviewing all personnel decisions made during Bradley's brief tenure to ensure no other employees were unfairly treated." "Thank you," I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. "What about the cross-Atlantic merger?" "It's yours again," Roger said without hesitation. "You built the foundation for it, you should see it through. I'd also like you to personally reach out to our European partners to reassure them about the situation." I nodded, trying to maintain my professional composure, despite the vindication I felt. "I'll start immediately." "One more thing," Roger added. "This situation has exposed serious flaws in our governance and oversight. I'll be recommending to the board that we implement new policies to prevent anything like this from happening again. I'd like you to be part of the committee developing those policies." As I left Roger's office, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Not only had I reclaimed my position, but I'd earned a new level of respect and influence within the company. Bradley's attempt to destroy my career had backfired spectacularly, instead catapulting me into a more prominent role. Back in the bullpen, Diana was waiting anxiously at my desk. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I assured her. "Better than fine, actually. Could you help me move my things back to my office? My real office?" Diana's eyes widened. "Really? That's amazing." Word spread quickly. As I packed up my few belongings from the bullpen desk colleagues who had avoided me for weeks, suddenly appeared to offer congratulations and support. Rachel rushed over and hugged me tightly. "I knew you'd fight back," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Marcus appeared with a thumbs up and a knowing smile. These were my real allies, the people who had stood by me when it mattered. By afternoon, I was back in my corner office, the nameplate already changed back to Annalise Carter, Senior Financial Analyst. As I looked out at the Manhattan skyline, I felt a profound sense of justice. The office wasn't just a status symbol anymore. It represented something more important, the triumph of integrity over deception, of perseverance over privilege. The next morning, Roger called an all-staff meeting to address the situation. Without going into specifics about Bradley's actions, he made it clear that there had been a serious breach of company policy and ethics, and that appropriate action had been taken. He publicly acknowledged my role in protecting the company's interests and announced my reinstatement as lead on the cross-Atlantic merger. Parkson and Rhodes has always prided itself on being a meritocracy, Roger concluded. Recent events have shown that we sometimes fall short of that ideal. Today, we recommit to those principles. Talent, hard work, and integrity will always be rewarded here, regardless of who you are or where you come from. As the applause filled the room, I caught Roger's eye. There was a new respect there, an acknowledgement between equals. In that moment, I knew that everything had changed. Bradley had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, his actions had only made me stronger. 6 months have passed since that dramatic day when Bradley Bennett was escorted from the building. In that time, my life and career have transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The cross-Atlantic merger was completed last month ahead of schedule, and with terms even more favorable than our original projections. The European partners, far from being concerned about the internal drama at Parkson and Rhodes, were impressed by how the company handled the situation. My transparent communication with them throughout the process built a foundation of trust that made negotiations smoother than expected. After the successful completion of the merger, Roger called me into his office for what I assumed would be a standard performance review. Instead, he offered me a promotion to Director of International Acquisitions, the very position Bradley had invented for himself. This time it came with a genuine title, expanded responsibilities, and a significant salary increase. I also moved to an even larger corner office on the executive floor, with a view that makes my old office look modest in comparison. The company has undergone significant changes as well. The governance committee I helped establish implemented new policies to prevent nepotism and favoritism in hiring and promotions. All executive decisions now require documentation and justification with clear metrics for performance evaluation. Most importantly, we created an anonymous reporting system for employees to flag potential ethics violations without fear of retaliation. As for Bradley Bennett, his downfall continued beyond Parkson and Rhodes. Brunswick Capital immediately severed all contact with him once they realized the legal jeopardy his actions had put them in. Criminal charges were filed for corporate espionage and securities fraud. Last I heard, he accepted a plea deal to avoid jail time, but his career in finance is effectively over. No reputable firm will touch him now. Roger Bennett has changed too. The experience with his son seemed to humble him in some ways. He's more thoughtful in his decisions, more willing to listen to diverse perspectives. He's spoken openly in industry forums about the dangers of allowing personal relationships to influence business decisions. Our working relationship has evolved into one of mutual respect and genuine collaboration. The healing process wasn't immediate or easy for me. For weeks after Bradley's departure, I struggled with lingering anxiety and hypervigilance. I questioned every email, double-checked every decision, worried constantly that someone else might try to undermine me. The trauma of having my position and identity so systematically attacked left emotional scars that took time to heal. Rachel was instrumental in my recovery. She encouraged me to seek therapy to process the experience, something I had always been reluctant to do. The therapist helped me recognize the impact of the workplace bullying I had endured and develop strategies to rebuild my confidence and trust in my colleagues. Gradually, I began to feel secure again. Each successful project, each positive interaction with colleagues, each acknowledgement of my contributions helped restore my sense of belonging and worth. I learned to separate my identity from my job title or office location, finding value in who I am rather than what position I hold. One unexpected outcome of this experience was my emergence as a mentor for other women in the company. Junior analysts began coming to me for advice not just about financial models or client management, but about navigating office politics and standing up for themselves in difficult situations. I established an informal mentoring program that has now been officially adopted by Human Resources as part of the company's professional development initiatives. Last week, I was invited to speak at a financial industry conference about ethical leadership. Standing at the podium looking out at hundreds of professionals from across the sector, I shared my story not as a victim, but as someone who stood up for what was right, despite the personal risk. The standing ovation I received affirmed that my experience resonated with many others who had faced similar challenges. The most profound lesson I learned from this ordeal is about the power of integrity and persistence. When Bradley first began his campaign against me, I could have resigned, found another job, avoided the conflict. Many people would have. But sometimes the harder path is the right one. By staying and fighting for my position, not just for my own benefit, but for the good of the company, I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. I also learned about the importance of building genuine relationships and allies. Without Rachel, Marcus, and Diana, I might never have uncovered Bradley's scheme or had the courage to take action. In the competitive world of finance, it's easy to see everyone as potential rivals, but having people you can trust is invaluable when facing adversity. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that power gained through manipulation and deception is inherently unstable. Bradley had every advantage: family connections, elite education, confident charm. But his foundation was built on lies. My position, earned through hard work, competence, and integrity, ultimately proved more durable. As I sit in my new office, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink, I feel a deep sense of peace. The journey wasn't one I would have chosen, but I'm grateful for where it led me. I'm stronger now, more confident in my abilities, more certain of my values. To anyone facing their own Bradley Bennett, I offer this: trust your worth, document everything, find your allies, and when the moment comes to stand up for yourself, do it with conviction and integrity. The truth has a power that no amount of manipulation can overcome. The corner office is nice, the director title is gratifying, but the real victory was in refusing to be diminished by someone else's agenda. In the end, Bradley didn't steal my office. He inadvertently helped me claim a better one, not just physically, but in terms of my position in the company and my sense of self-worth. One email changed everything, but only because I had the courage to send it. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to stand up against someone who seemed to hold all the power? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life workplace stories that might help you navigate your own career challenges. And if you know someone who's currently dealing with workplace bullying or sabotage, share this video with them as a reminder that they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your integrity is your most powerful asset. Protect it at all costs.